tutorial, we're going to look at a fundamental concept of all programming languages: variables. A variable is a container in memory that can hold one thing, one piece of data, but we can override that data whenever we want as well. Hence the word variable. The contents of this container can change at any point during program execution. So under New Project, click Create New Project. Make sure Visual Basic Windows Classic Desktop is selected, and so is Console App. And we'll rename the project Variables. Press OK. Now Visual Basic is what's known as a strongly typed language. That means before you can use a variable and put any data into it, you have to formally declare that variable. That's just a fancy way of saying create the variable. When we create a variable, we're basically saying to the Visual Basic compiler, we want to request a small space in memory to store a data value. Then whenever we need to refer to that data value, instead of referring to the value itself, we're going to refer to the name of the variable. So a variable declaration has a set syntax. We begin with the following. Dim, let's say name as string. Dim letter as char. Dim age as integer. Dim height as double. Dim profit as decimal. Maybe spell profit correctly. Notice the pattern. First of all, we have got dim as a keyword. It's short for dimension, which just means create this variable. Then we have the name of our variable. In this case, it is actually called name. And the name of a variable is more commonly known as its identifier. Then we have the keyword as, followed by the data type of that variable. In Visual Basic, you have to specify the data type, and that data type can never ever change. In a later video, we'll look at in more detail as to what these different data types mean. When we declare the variables, we also have the choice of leaving them empty, as they currently are, and you'll see that there's a green squiggly line. There are different coloured squiggly lines that Visual Studio will supply for us, and green is actually okay. You're in trouble if you see a red squiggly line, but green simply is telling us, did you know that this variable is currently empty? If I go dim letter as char equals A, when I click onto another line, you'll see that green squiggly line disappears. And that's okay. What I've just done there is not only declare the variable letter as a char data type, but I've also initialized it, which means I've set its starting value to A. A typical example of this would be if I was using a variable to count or total some values. So if I go dim count as integer, it might be really important that I actually set a starting value to that. So I'm going to initialize my count variable to 0.